Marina Cole stood by the fog-blurred window of her cramped apartment in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, watching a thin drizzle slide down the glass like tired tears. The sky outside was a dull sheet of gray, pressing down on the city as heavily as the thoughts pressing down on her chest. It was the kind of morning where everything felt cold, even the air inside the room. Welcome to Heartline Stories. I share real emotional journeys every day, and if you are here for the first time, welcome. Stay with me until the end of this story. I promise it will leave an unforgettable mark on you. Now, let me take you back to the moment everything changed. Marina, are you awake? Her mother's voice floated from the next room, thin and shaky. Marina pushed a lock of chestnut hair behind her ear and forced herself to answer gently. I am, Mom. I am coming. She walked into the room where Donna Cole lay curled under a worn blanket. The once lively woman now looked drained, her skin pale and waxy, her eyes sunken from months of pain. The air smelled faintly of antiseptics and fear. I made you tea, Marina whispered, setting the cup down carefully. How are you feeling? Donna's attempt at a smile cracked into a grimace. Ask me again when I'm healthy. Until then, I'll lie every time. Marina stroked her mother's hand, failing to hide her worry. Where's Dad? He went to talk to those men again. Donna said the last words like they were venom on her tongue. Then she closed her eyes, exhausted. I told him not to take their money. God knows I warned him. Marina's stomach twisted. She remembered too clearly the day her father came home with the envelope of cash money for Donna's expensive autoimmune treatments, money they couldn't earn fast enough. It had felt like salvation, a miracle. But miracles from the wrong people always came with a price. The apartment door slammed so violently that both women jumped. Marina rushed out and found her father, Raymond, leaning against the wall. His hands trembled. His face was ghost white. Dad? What did they say? He sank into a chair without looking at her. For a long moment, the only sound was the refrigerator humming. We have 1 week. Marina's breath caught. 1 week for what? To pay it all back, Raymond whispered. Every cent. And if we don't? They said they'll take the apartment. Marina felt the floor sway. Is that all? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. No. There is something worse. Raymond finally lifted his eyes to his daughter, and in them she saw shame raw, suffocating shame. Their boss, a very wealthy man, offered another option. He said he would forgive the entire debt if you agree to marry him. For a second, Marina couldn't breathe. Marry him? Who is he? His name is Lawrence Maddox. He's pushing 60, a recluse. He's lived alone for years. Had an accident. He barely goes outside now. But he has power, money, influence, more than we can imagine. Raymond lowered his head. I would never ask this of you, Marina, but they said if we don't accept, your mother may not survive the month. And in that moment, Marina Cole felt the world narrow to a single, terrifying choice, one no daughter should ever have to make. The next afternoon, the knock on their apartment door was so firm and precise that Marina stiffened before she even reached for the handle. When she opened it, the hallway seemed to shrink around the figure standing there. A tall man in a charcoal trench coat stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His posture was straight, almost military. His dark hair was neatly slicked back, and his expression was unreadable, neither welcoming nor hostile, just quietly assessing everything. Good afternoon, he said, offering a business card with a gloved hand. Griffin Ward, personal representative of Mr. Lawrence Maddox. Marina's father swallowed hard. Donna shifted uncomfortably on her bed. Marina felt the air tighten. Griffin's eyes moved to her, lingering for a moment, not with desire, but with calculation. Mr. Maddox asked me to speak with you directly, Miss Cole. Marina folded her arms. If this is about your employer's offer, then I need to understand what exactly he wants. Griffin nodded slightly, as though he had expected that response. Mr. Maddox is a private man, reclusive. After the incident 7 years ago, he rarely shows himself publicly. The explosion left lasting damage, severe facial trauma, chronic nerve pain. His health is fragile. Explosion? Marina asked sharply. What explosion? Griffin's jaw tightened. A warehouse accident. Classified investigation. The details are sealed. He continued. Since the accident, Mr. Maddox has lived on his estate outside the city. He receives minimal visitors. He has no family left. No wife, no children. He wishes for a companion. A companion or a wife? Marina challenged. A lawful wife, Griffin replied calmly. Not a servant, not a nurse. Legal, recognized, protected. Marina's heart thudded painfully. And what does he expect from me? Presence, Griffin said simply. Stability. Conversation. Someone to anchor his final years. And in return, he will cover every medical expense your mother needs. The debt your father owes will be cleared immediately. Your family will be safe. It was too clean, too controlled, too perfectly arranged. Marina's voice hardened. If this is a purchase, Griffin, say it plainly. He met her eyes without flinching. It is an arrangement, Miss Cole, but Mr. Maddox insists on fairness. He is not asking you for intimacy, only company. He knows the unusual nature of this request. She tasted bitterness in her throat. I have conditions. Griffin lifted a brow, waiting. First, my mother's treatment starts today. Not tomorrow, today. Full coverage. Second, my father's debt is erased immediately. Third, I meet Mr. Maddox before I make any decision. Griffin studied her with mild surprise, then pulled out his phone and stepped to the window. His voice dropped low as he spoke to someone unseen. Yes, she insists. No, she will not agree without it. Understood. When he returned, he slipped the phone into his coat pocket. Mr. Maddox agrees. A car will pick you up tomorrow at 3 to bring you to the estate. He handed her a sealed envelope. An advance for your mother's treatment. When Marina opened it, she inhaled sharply. It was more money than her family had held in years. Griffin watched her with his unreadable expression. We will see you tomorrow, Miss Cole. And as he walked out the door, Marina felt the walls closing in slowly, inevitably around the choice she had never wanted to make. The black sedan arrived the next day, at exactly 3 o'clock, gliding to a stop in front of Marina's apartment building, with unnerving precision. The windows were tinted so dark she could not see a single shape inside. It felt less like a ride and more like a summons. Marina kissed her mother on the forehead, hugged her father tightly, and forced herself not to tremble as she stepped outside. The car door opened silently. Griffin Ward sat in the front seat, rigid as a statue. Miss Cole, he said quietly. Right on time. The drive took nearly an hour, weaving through the outskirts of Pittsburgh, then deeper into the vast stretches of rural Pennsylvania. Farmland turned into thick woods. Sunlight dimmed beneath layers of towering pines. When the gates finally appeared, Marina's breath caught. A massive iron archway rose ahead, engraved with the name Mad Doc's Estate. 2 stone lions guarded either side of the entrance. As the gates opened, the car followed a winding path lined with maple trees that swayed in a slow, almost mournful rhythm. The mansion emerged from behind the trees like something out of a forgotten century, a towering Victorian structure with dark green shutters, steep roofs, and sprawling wings that stretched like arms. Beautiful, yes, but cold. Isolated. Too quiet. Inside, the silence was deeper. Her footsteps echoed on polished marble floors as Griffin led her through wide hallways, illuminated by antique sconces. Portraits lined the walls, stern faces watching her with hollow eyes. He is waiting for you in the library, Griffin said, stopping before a tall oak door. Marina swallowed. May I know what to expect? He hesitated for the first time. Just remember, he is not a monster, Miss Cole. Before she could ask what that meant, Griffin opened the door. The library was enormous, its walls covered floor to ceiling with books. A fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace. Near the window, a man sat in a leather armchair, his back to the door. "Mr. Maddox," Griffin announced. "Miss Marina Cole is here." The man did not move for several seconds. Then a slow, weary voice responded, "Bring her closer." Marina's stomach tightened as she approached. When she finally came around the chair, she froze. Lawrence Maddox wore an ivory half-mask that covered the entire left side of his face. The visible half his right cheek, jaw, and piercing blue eye was handsome in a worn, weathered way. But the mask cast a shadow that felt both elegant and unsettling. "Do not be frightened," he murmured, noticing her reaction. "The mask is necessary. The accident left the other side of my face damaged." Marina steadied her breath. "Why me?" Lawrence considered her for a long moment, his voice low and tired when he spoke again. "Because you did not run from hardship. You walked toward it for the people you love. I have been wealthy my entire life, Miss Cole, and yet I have never known anyone who valued something other than money." He shifted, leaning heavily on a cane she had not noticed. "I will not force you to stay, but I am tired of facing silence, tired of being treated like a ghost. I want someone who sees me as more than a ruined face and a fading name." Marina lowered her gaze to the ornate rug beneath them. "And if I refuse? You may walk out that door," he said softly, "but the money in that envelope will need to be returned, and the debt will remain." The message was clear. Marina lifted her chin. "When is the wedding?" Lawrence exhaled as though he had been holding the breath for years. "As soon as you are ready." And as she looked at him, this masked man, surrounded by wealth, shadows, and secrets, Marina realized she was stepping into a life she didn't understand, and a story far darker than she had imagined. The wedding took place 3 days later in a quiet courthouse at the edge of town. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. Only the low hum of an old ceiling fan and the distant sound of traffic rushing past the windows. Lawrence Maddox arrived in a tailored dark coat, leaning heavily on his cane, the porcelain mask covering half his face as always. Marina wore a simple cream dress borrowed from her mother's friend, a dress meant for a graduation, not a marriage. When the clerk asked if she would take Lawrence Maddox as her lawful husband, Marina hesitated for only a breath. A single, fragile yes escaped her lips. Lawrence did not kiss her. He only bowed his head slightly, almost apologetically. "Thank you," he whispered. And just like that, Marina Cole became Mrs. Marina Maddox. The car ride back to the estate was silent. Lawrence rested his head against the window, exhausted. Marina watched the trees blur by, feeling as though she were being swept into a river she could not swim against. When they returned, Griffin led her to the 3rd floor. "These rooms are yours now," he said. "Choose whichever you like." Marina stepped into a corner suite with large windows overlooking the forest. The furniture was elegant but softened with age. A faint floral scent lingered in the air, almost familiar. "Someone lived here before," Marina said quietly. Griffin froze for half a second, barely noticeable, but enough. "The previous occupant left many years ago," he replied. "This room has been unused since." Marina touched the carved bedpost. The wood was smooth, worn in places by the touch of hands over time. She wanted to ask further, but Griffin's expression made it clear the conversation was over. That evening, she and Lawrence shared dinner in one of the smaller dining rooms. The table could have seated 20, yet only 2 places were set. Lawrence sat upright but slow, moving carefully as if every motion required thought. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. "Yes," Marina lied. He studied her for a moment but did not push. "May I ask, why did you choose the room you did?" "It felt calm," Marina answered. "Familiar in a strange way." Lawrence lowered his gaze. "It belonged to someone I loved very deeply," he said quietly. "Someone who is no longer here." "A daughter?" Marina guessed. His hand tightened around his fork. "I would prefer not to speak of it tonight." Marina nodded, feeling the quiet ache in his voice. Later, as she made her way back to her room, she heard a faint sound traveling through the hallway. A soft click, a door closing or opening, followed by the unmistakable echo of footsteps. Marina turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. The next night, she heard it again. And again. Footsteps. A muffled voice. A soft, sorrowful cry. All coming from the far end of the West Wing, a section Griffin insisted was under renovation and off-limits. Yet Marina sensed something else. Something hidden beneath the wallpapered walls and polished floors. One evening, Lawrence collapsed while moving from his armchair to the fireplace. Marina rushed to him, startled by how light he felt in her arms. How fragile. His breath trembled. "It's the medication," he murmured. But his eyes said something else, fear. Marina placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "You are not alone," she whispered. But as she helped him back to his chair, the echo of footsteps in the locked West Wing returned. Louder this time. Closer. And Marina realized the estate was not silent at all. It was full of secrets, breathing, watching, waiting. Marina waited until Lawrence was resting comfortably before she dared to speak about the one thing that had been pressing on her mind for days. She found him in the conservatory the next morning, sitting beneath a skylight where pale sunlight touched his mask like a fragile blessing. "Lawrence," she began softly, "there's something I need to ask you." He looked up slowly, weary but attentive. "Yes, Marina?" "The West Wing. Why is it locked? Why does no one go there? And why do I hear things?" Lawrence stiffened. His fingers curled faintly around the handle of his cane. "What kinds of things?" Footsteps, doors, sometimes crying. A long, painful silence stretched between them. Lawrence turned his face away, as if the very air had become heavy. "I suppose it was only a matter of time," he murmured. "The West Wing belonged to my daughter, Helena." Marina's breath caught. She had guessed as much, but hearing it confirmed felt like touching something sacred. "I thought she left years ago," Marina said gently. Lawrence let out a hollow laugh, one filled with regret more than humor. "She did. Or at least, that is what everyone believed." His voice cracked. "Helena was brilliant, fearless, and stubborn. She loved her freedom, her research, her causes. I thought giving her everything she wanted would make her happy, but I gave her the wrong things. Money instead of time. Safety instead of trust." He leaned back, his shoulders trembling. "After the warehouse explosion, she blamed me, accused me of cutting corners, of hiding something. I denied it, but she never believed me. We argued for months. She said she would expose me. She wrote letters, angry ones. Then she disappeared." Lawrence covered his face with his hand. "I have not forgiven myself for that night. I never will." Marina placed her hand on his arm. To her surprise, he didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Lawrence looked at her with a hollowed expression. "I kept her room sealed. I could not bear to touch a single thing she left behind, and sometimes I think the house remembers her more than I do." Grief has strange ways of echoing. Marina wanted to believe him. But the sounds she heard weren't memories, they were real. And then something shifted in her pocket. She reached into it and pulled out the object she had found beneath her bed the night before. A dusty blue hair ribbon, frayed at the edges. She had seen it before in the photograph on the staircase of a smiling young Helena, her hair tied back with that exact ribbon. Lawrence inhaled sharply when he saw it. "Where did you?" "Under my bed, in the room that used to be hers." He closed his eyes. "I told Griffin to clear everything before you moved in. He must have missed that." Marina hesitated. Something about the explanation felt too convenient. Later that afternoon, as she passed the study, she heard voices, Griffin's deep, controlled tone, and another staff member whispering nervously. She paused. "Is everything prepared?" Griffin hissed. "Yes, sir." But if someone finds out that— No one will find out, Griffin snapped. She cannot know what happened. Neither of them can. Marina's blood ran cold. Griffin was hiding something. Something about Helena. And something about Lawrence. And it was becoming clearer, terrifyingly clear, that the truth inside this house was far darker than a daughter who simply ran away. It was a truth someone was willing to kill to protect. That night, Marina waited until the mansion fell silent before leaving her room. The hallways were dim, lit only by the soft glow of wall sconces that flickered like nervous breaths. Every step she took echoed faintly, as if the house itself were listening. She followed the sound she'd heard for nights, the faint, rhythmic tapping from the west wing. When she reached the locked door, she tried the handle. As expected, it didn't budge. But she noticed something new. The screws on the hinges were bright silver, freshly replaced. Too new for a wing supposedly untouched for years. Someone had been going in and out. Marina swallowed. She slid her fingers along the wood paneling, pressing gently until she found a spot that felt hollow. She pushed, and to her shock, a narrow panel slid open, revealing a small hidden latch connected to the lock. The door clicked. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Inside, the air was colder, stale, heavy. She stepped down a short flight of stairs, her phone, flashlight slicing through the darkness. The space below was a basement corridor, long and narrow, lined with storage rooms. One door stood ajar. Inside, she found boxes stacked chaotically. Old clothes, torn papers, a cracked mirror, and on a dusty table lay a leather-bound journal with the name Helena carved faintly on the cover. Marina's breath hitched. She opened it. The entries were frantic, half-finished sentences. Names scribbled, crossed out. Griffin is lying. He knows about the explosion. Father is not the one who— I found the documents. Griffin followed me. He is watching me. If anything happens to me— A floorboard creaked behind her. Marina spun around. Griffin Ward stood in the doorway, face frozen in a calm, chilling expression. The overhead light cast sharp shadows across his features, making him look carved from stone. "Busy night?" he asked softly. Marina hid the journal behind her leg. I got lost." He stepped forward. "No, you didn't." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know how many times I warned him this would happen? That bringing someone new into this house would only stir up trouble?" He circled her slowly, like a predator deciding the cleanest way to kill. "Helena wandered into places she shouldn't have too," he murmured. "Curiosity is a dangerous disease in this house." Marina backed up. Her heel hit the table. "I should go," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Griffin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course. After all, Mr. Maddox needs you healthy." The words felt like a threat. She slipped past him, clutching the journal under her sweater, and hurried up the stairs. Every instinct screamed to run straight to Lawrence, but she stopped herself. Not yet. Not without proof. At dawn, as Lawrence rested in his armchair, she entered his study and gently placed the journal in his hands. He stared at it for a long moment before opening it. As he read, his face crumpled, mask or no mask. The pain was unmistakable. My God. Marina. She was investigating something. She thought I was behind the explosion. She thought I was a monster. His voice trembled. But she didn't know the truth. Marina leaned forward. What truth? Lawrence shut his eyes. The explosion. It wasn't an accident. Someone meant to kill me. The warehouse was sabotaged, but the investigation was buried. Someone powerful made sure of that. Marina's blood ran cold. Who? Lawrence opened his eyes slowly. Someone who has been beside me for 20 years. Someone I trusted with my life. And at that moment, Marina knew exactly who he meant. Griffin. But before she could speak, Lawrence went pale, his hand gripping his chest. The medication, he gasped. It's wrong. Something is wrong. Marina grabbed him before he collapsed. In that instant, she realized the truth with terrifying clarity. Someone wasn't waiting for Lawrence to die naturally. They were making sure it would happen soon. And she was trapped inside the same house with him. Marina barely managed to ease Lawrence onto the chaise before he lost consciousness. His skin was clammy, his pulse faint, his breaths ragged. She reached for the bottle of pills on the side table, small white tablets Griffin claimed were prescribed to help manage pain. But the label was different. The dosage had changed, and the prescribing doctor's name was misspelled. Her hands shook. This wasn't medication. This was poison, delivered slowly, silently. Footsteps approached the study. Marina's heart leapt into her throat. Griffin appeared in the doorway, calm as ever, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his voice as smooth as polished steel. Marina stepped in front of Lawrence instinctively. "Stay back." Griffin smiled, but there was nothing human in it. "You found the journal, and now the pills. You really should have listened when I told you curiosity was dangerous." "What did you do to him?" Marina snapped. "Nothing he didn't deserve." Griffin walked inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. "Your husband has been a stain in my way for 15 years. Lawrence Maddox had everything: power, wealth, influence. And what did he use it for? Guilt, retreat, self-pity. A man like him wastes what he has." He took another step forward. "Helena discovered my accounts. She figured out the explosion wasn't an accident and that I orchestrated it to take control of the company. Poor girl, thought she could expose me. So I had to relocate her." Marina's breath froze. "She's alive?" "Alive enough," Griffin said coldly. "For my purposes." Lawrence stirred weakly behind Marina. Griffin's eyes narrowed. He wasn't supposed to wake up for hours. Griffin reached into his coat. Marina lunged for the nearest object, an iron candle holder, and raised it, hands trembling. "Stay away from him," she warned. Griffin paused, amused. A heroic wife. How quaint. He lifted a small black device, a syringe pen. "This will be painless. Heart failure. The grieving widow will inherit nothing. Helena remains hidden where she belongs. And I move on with Maddox's assets exactly as planned." Marina's heart hammered. "Think, Marina, think." She shifted slightly, placing herself fully between Lawrence and Griffin. "You said Helena is alive. Prove it." Griffin tilted his head. "I don't need to prove anything to you." A sudden voice cut through the room, hoarse and trembling. "Yes, you do." Griffin spun. There in the doorway, gripping the frame for support, stood a young woman, thin, pale, her hair tangled, eyes sunken but burning with fury. "Helena, you," Helena whispered, pointing at Griffin. "You did this to me." Griffin's expression finally cracked. He lunged toward her. Marina reacted first. With every ounce of strength, she swung the iron candle holder. It connected with a sickening crack. Griffin stumbled, dropped the syringe, and collided with the edge of the desk before collapsing to the floor. Helena crumpled, sobbing. Marina rushed to her. Lawrence tried to sit up, tears streaming down the visible half of his face. "My daughter." "Helena." The moment was shattered by the sound of pounding footsteps. Uniformed officers burst into the room, guns drawn. "Hands up? Drop everything?" Helena raised a shaking hand. I called them hours ago, before I escaped." Griffin groaned as officers cuffed him. Marina held Helena tightly as Lawrence reached for them both, his hand shaking but alive. And for the first time, the house exhaled secrets broken open. The darkness finally pierced. The ambulance lights flickered against the stone walls of the Maddox estate as paramedics carried Helena out on a stretcher. She clung weakly to Marina's hand until the very last second, whispering a trembling thank you before the doors closed. Lawrence, pale but conscious, was helped into another vehicle for immediate evaluation. Marina stayed by his side, refusing to let go of his hand even as medical staff swarmed around them. It was only once they reached the hospital hours later, when the chaos settled, that Marina finally exhaled. She watched Lawrence sleeping in his bed, the mask resting on the nightstand beside him. Without it, his face looked vulnerable, human, no longer something to fear or hide. The dawn crept in through the blinds, soft and golden. Helena was alive. Lawrence was safe. Griffin was in custody, charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, fraud, and tampering with medical treatments. And Marina finally felt the heavy chains she'd carried since the day Griffin knocked on her apartment door begin to loosen. When Lawrence woke, his voice was faint. "Is Helena safe?" Marina whispered, brushing a hand gently across his forehead. "She is safe now. She is free." A tear slid from the corner of his eye. "I failed her," he murmured. "I failed both of you." Marina shook her head. "No, you trusted the wrong person. But trust is not a crime. And today you have your daughter back. That is what matters." He looked at her for a long moment. "And what about you, Marina? What keeps you here now?" The question was soft, not desperate, simply honest. She took a slow breath. "At first, I stayed because I had no choice. Then, because I felt responsible. And now?" She hesitated, feeling the truth rise like warmth inside her chest. "Now I stay because I want to. Not for the estate, not for any arrangements, but because you deserve someone who sees you beyond everything you survived. And because I care about you, Lawrence. More than I ever expected to." Lawrence reached for her hand with unsteady fingers. "You gave me back something I thought I lost forever. A reason to fight." Weeks passed. Helena's strength returned quickly, fueled by determination to reclaim her life. She and Marina formed a bond unexpected, sister-like. Lawrence, no longer drugged and weakened, made progress daily, walking without the cane for short distances and speaking with newfound certainty. One crisp morning, the three of them returned to the small lakeside cabin Lawrence had once dreamed of but never built. This time, construction crews were already laying the foundation. The family he thought he lost was finally taking shape in the place he loved most. Lawrence turned to Marina, sunlight catching the healed lines of his exposed face. "You helped me reclaim my life," he whispered. "And I want you to share whatever comes next. Not because of a contract, because you have become my heart." Marina smiled, tears filling her eyes. "And you have become mine." They stood hand in hand, watching the workers build a future none of them had imagined. In the quiet breeze sweeping across the lake, one truth settled with absolute clarity. Sometimes life's darkest corridors lead us to the people who bring the light. And sometimes the love we never expected becomes the love that saves us all.